Welcome to Whistleblowers in partnership with Wix Trade Pro. Coming up.
Name on the trophy twice. And the engraving says, the pinnacle of all club competitions, inspired by the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino.
Arsenal fans, the Flat Earth Society, seeing things that don't exist.
I'm going to call it the Clattenburg effect. This is really all about money, isn't it?
No.
Hello and welcome to Whistleblowers. Gordon Smart here. I'm joined as ever by the man who won't hear a single bad word against Evangelos Marinakis. It's Mark Clattenburg. And we have the fella with a Sam Allardyce-sized bounty on his head. It's the one and only ferocious Fleet Street veteran, Ian Ladyman. I should say, before we get any further today, great to see you lads. We have a table in front of us. For Half a table. For anybody watching on YouTube, you'll notice that we're still in the infancy of the table build challenge.
Casual table.
The casual table,
I would call it.
I mean, it's a splinter in the arse, that one. So we'll get that sorted with Wix Trade Pro. They sent it to us. We will get it tidied up. So tune into next week's episode to see how we get on with that. Right, straight into the business of football today. We've got an Arsenal fan behind the glass on this podcast crying tears.
Oh, mama. The violin. Fixtures
have been announced.
Yeah.
Ian Ladyman, what's the story?
Well, Arsenal will begin the season away at Manchester United. Now, most people would see that as a free pass these days, or
3 points.
Free hit. Arsenal fans, the Flat Earth Society out there talking about conspiracies, seeing things that don't exist. Arsenal's opening fixtures go Man United, Leeds, Liverpool, Forest, Man City, Newcastle. They've got it in for us, Arsenal fans say. Henry, our producer, says they've got it in for them. It's nonsense, of course, but people have been saying to me this morning, does a fixture computer exist? Or is that just something that the Premier League hide behind whilst they sit there and put it together themselves? It does exist. Of course it exists. However, Mark, you do have a bit of insight, don't you, into some of the factors that do have to come into play when they're putting the list of games together.
It mustn't be easy. You know, there's got to be a lot of factors put into it. Like you've got the derbies, but a lot of things is police generated as well. Because if you, for example, you've got the London Marathon on, it needs policing. So therefore some games within the capital will be restricted. So there's other things that go on that will impact the fixtures. So that all goes into the computer. You know, teams can't, for example, Newcastle and Sunderland can't play on the same weekend. So therefore all of this generates, and unfortunately the head and the tail coin for Arsenal is gone on the wrong side because they always feel, but I don't get this argument, really. I don't, you say you're playing this team or you're playing this team. When is the best team? For me, when I was refereeing, it was always best to play the big sides first because they went unprepared. They've gone on to long trips in Asia, in America. The players are looking to find the feet in the opening games anyways. So if you want a chance, you want to play, I would say, the big sides first, because you see the big side struggle and then they start finding the feet, and then it's like, the bang, they start hitting the form. So after probably a month or so, you want to avoid them, not the first couple of games.
Funny though, isn't it, how football fans do generally think that the world is set up against them. And I think that is more and more prevalent these days. I think social media has played into that kind of churn of kind of slightly maniac thoughts amongst football fans. But having said that, I remember being at a Premier League media open day before the 2013-14 season, David Moyes' first season at Manchester United, well, only season at Manchester United as it turns out, and he sat there in front of the pens and the microphones and the tape recorders that day and said, I've had a look at our opening fixtures, I don't like them. No one can ever tell me that these things are totally done by computer. So even a Premier League manager was playing into that theory of conspiracy.
But then there has to be an element, doesn't there, surely, where there is some kind of manual intervention, right? Because you say that's such a complicated set of logistics, isn't it? Like you say, the London Marathon's involved, European fixtures are involved. You know, you can't have two teams playing in the same city at a weekend, obviously. Yeah. So you have to have a level of manual intervention, don't you? Yeah.
No, the input will be manual, but eventually the computer will put in. It's a bit like the Champions League, Joe. Right. You know, you see there's that permutation can't go with that permutation, and then eventually it spits out a fixture. It's the same scenario. All the data goes in. Unfortunately, people will always complain because you seem to get that run. When it comes to October, November, They're not playing the big sides, so they'll not be complaining at that point. You can't have it in all ways. What start does people want? Do they want Sunderland? Do they want, Leeds? They've got Leeds, but what? No. But I'm not saying that. But what do they want? Do they want a gift? Do they want to play? I wouldn't want to play Brentford away, Bournemouth away.
I'll tell you what I don't want, and I don't think many football fans really, really want, is for the Premier League to kick off on Friday, the 15th of August, Liverpool at home to Bournemouth. Now, I know this is the way it is. It started last season. I think I went to it. I think the first game of the season last year was Man United at home to Fulham on a Friday night. Friday night football offends me anyway. From my point of view, a Friday night is either for going to the pub straight after work, for going home and spending it with the family, going out for dinner with your wife, maybe, meeting your mates in the pub later on. It's not for football. Friday night for me is not for football, and it's certainly no way to start a new Premier League season. What's wrong with starting a Premier League season in the sunshine and on a Saturday lunchtime?
Some people might argue, Ian, that it's a perfect way to kick off a weekend.
It's perfect.
Starts there.
As a referee, on a Friday, it was perfect. Because then you had the whole weekend to enjoy.
To be abused. For a terrible decision.
Let everybody else.
Friday night football fan?
No, I'm a devil's advocate. It's not for me. I'm a traditionalist. Like Saturday, 3 o'clock for me, all day long. But things move on, don't they?
Yeah, but start it out. Okay, I can tolerate Friday night football during the season just about. I never go to any of them, but I can just about tolerate it. It's not a way to start a football season.
No.
It's not a way to kick off a football
season.
No,
I agree. I still think Friday nights have a part. I think, and I still believe this, I think teams in Europe should have that. I think all over Europe, they do benefit the teams that are playing in Europe. They'll play on a Friday night. I get that argument if it does suit, but it doesn't really suit a Friday night opening day. I think you're right. Opening day should be 12:30, where you've got your 12:30, your 3 o'clocks and your 5:30, which is traditional that everybody expects now. You've got a whole day of football, and that's how it should be.
There we go. Right, it's the middle of June. There is a competitive club football going on at the moment. The Club World Cup. Ian, what's it all about? Is the Daily Mail Sports Desk excited about it?
Well, as I said in a meeting about a month ago when we were sitting around a table, not dismissing it, but trying to get our heads around how it would feel, what it would be. And I said then that although fundamentally, again, as a football traditionalist, I'm not a huge fan of it. In fact, that's an understatement. I'm quite passionately opposed to the concept of it. But in terms of us, the appetite for football these days does not stop. We know that. So we figured that when it came around, people would be interested, and they will. It started slowly because the nature of the early games mean that none of the big teams are clashing at the moment. That'll come later in the tournament. I think the interest in it will grow as long as clubs like Chelsea and City and, of course, Real Madrid and Bayern Munich stay in it.
I'm going to call it the Clattenburg effect. This is really all about money, isn't it?
Now. I thought you were going to be nice to me today.
That was your moment to deny it, by the way. And you didn't take it.
No, I wouldn't deny anything. That's true.
It is about the numbers. It is about the numbers.
Give us an idea of the money, Ian. Because
it is about the numbers. So I think the total prize pot for the tournament is about £1.25 billion, I believe. The winners are going to go home with something like $100 million. I think it's an enormous sums of money involved. You get money each time you win a game. For example, you get money if you win the group, and that is what drives FIFA. With these tournaments, that's what drives FIFA in terms of the expanded World Cup next summer, 48 teams, of course. And this is what's unfortunately will motivate some of the clubs as well. Pep Guardiola has spoken quite candidly about his attitude towards this tournament. He said 5 or 6 weeks ago, rather flippantly, but, as Ian Brown once said, for everything a reason, and that's certainly the case with Pep. He doesn't say things that don't matter. And he said that he might take his golf clubs, that he might encourage the players to take their wives and girlfriends with them. Now, none of that has come to pass, but that was his point. His point was, I'm not a fan of this. I don't think we should be there. But he's never, ever going to be naive enough to say to the powers that be at Manchester City, we're not going, because they can't turn away.
Financial fair play.
Sorry?
How does it affect financial fair play?
Much a huge.
Well, it increases the pot, doesn't it?
So just as we talked about the importance of the Europa League to Tottenham, because they reckon they'll get about £100 million minimum out of Champions League participation next season. That's what Celtic got this season, for example. So just as that £100 million is crucial to Tottenham, this, however much it is, however much City go home with, however much Chelsea go home with, it's hugely important. You've seen the outlay that City have already been making this summer in terms of new players. A lot of that will be against the background of making the last 8 of this tournament at a very least.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though, Rodri was moaning again, was he not, last season? But fair play, he was badly injured, wasn't he? But he said there were too many fixtures. Is this too much football? What about player welfare?
I understand what Ian's saying. I think if they moved this tournament, say, another week or two later, and allowed, especially after the international break, which we've just had the international matches, if they created this 3 or 4 week window and then played the tournament instead of having meaningless friendlies, which they do anyways, they've been having in the States and in Asia, then I get what Pep's saying, because you're then going to use it as a pre-season get-together tournament, which they try to create by opening the transfer window to allow players to come in to get ready for the team. So I get that side of it. And then you could give the players a 1 or 2 week break before the start of the Premier League season, but still have them 1 or 2 friendlies within Europe, not going off to Asia.
To be fair, Mark, I know, for example, Manchester City are doing it that way. Man City won't come home from this tournament and then go on a foreign pre-season tour. They will come home from this tournament and then have a couple of friendlies. What you're saying is to use the Club World Cup as a pre-season. What I would say, it's a fair point, interesting theory. What I would say is that the difference between friendly football, pre-season friendly football, and competitive football is, and you know that, is a million miles away. And to briefly answer your point, Gordon, without labouring it, because I've done it before, do not ever labour under the illusion that the powers that be give a stuff about player welfare, because they don't. Because if they did, they wouldn't do this. And there ends the argument. They don't care.
Interestingly, though, what I did like was $4 if you bought a bundle of 5 tickets. That kind of stuff I think is quite good. 50 million spent by FIFA to boost ticket sales. Incidentally, the BBC and ITV both said no to televising it, which
everybody said no.
Everyone pretty much, apart from
Dan's. Is it Dan? Or however you say. But what I can't understand about the tickets, I'd be upset. So I'm buying my ticket at the start of the tournament, and then FIFA said they've got this where they can reduce it based on how many people demand. And I bought a ticket. I'm not going to.
What Oasis did. What do they call it when
the dynamic pricing?
Dynamic pricing. That's it.
That means I'm not going to buy my ticket. I'm going to wait and wait and wait and wait. So that's why there's been empty stadiums, because people aren't going to go if they find out that I've paid, say, $100 for a ticket, and then I can get it for $4.
Do you think Gianni Infantino's thinking about welfare, or is he thinking about cash?
Only one.
There's only one thing there.
There's only one thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, looking at Infantino, I mean, all roads lead back to him. You know, he presided over the Russian World Cup, the Qatar World Cup, both of which he said were the best World Cups ever.
Strange,
but how much of this is about him, do you think, Ian, and his ego?
Yeah, a huge amount is about that. I mean, he drives that organisation. He runs that organisation almost as his personal fiefdom. And the sad thing about it is that there's precedent for it.
Yeah.
Because Blatter used to do it. Sepp Blatter used to do it at UEFA. Seferin does it. Michel Platini used to do it. And it saddens me when I was thinking about this on the train this morning. It saddens me because organisation like FIFA, at the head of a worldwide game that so many people play, the opportunities to play football for everybody are greater now than they've ever been. The love for the game is as great as it's ever been. The growth of the game is greater than it's ever been. And it wouldn't be great if we had a humble organisation at the top of it that actually had right down in their stomachs the good of the game at heart. And you can't say that they do. They will argue that they do. And they will point to all the things they do, the outreach programs that they do, the money that gets siphoned off these tournaments into football and growing footballing communities. They will point to all of that. But undeniably, fundamentally, to me, the motivation remains utterly selfish and utterly greedy. Is he the most egotistical man in football? What, apart from him? Sorry, Mark.
I'm out of football now.
Sorry, Mark. Yes, I would say possibly so. I mean, you only had to look at the people who were on the field before the start of the last World Cup final. Salt Bay was on the field. Why was he on the field? The number of celebrity stroke influencers, etc., who have managed to infiltrate the corridors of power at the top of our game, and it all leads back to him.
His name's on the trophy twice.
Yeah. His name's on the trophy twice.
Name's on the trophy. And let me take you through some of this roll call of Gianni Infantino, ego and narcissism. Incidentally, the fish always rots from the head down, doesn't it? He started describing FIFA as an official provider of happiness to humanity. How about that? In 2022, Infantino announced the FIFA Council had agreed his first 3-year term as president. It was only a partial term after replacing Sepp Blatter, by the way. So he's only in his second term, but he can stay on to 2031, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, he arrives late to stuff. I think 8 European members walked out after a thing in Qatar where he wasn't there on time. What was the other thing he said? The Club World Cup. I love this bit of detail about the trophy, right? The trophy can only be done in public with a key that only he has access to. Like it's a nuclear weapon of some description. Name on the trophy twice. And the engraving says, "We are witness to a new age, the golden era of club football, the era of the FIFA Club World Cup, the pinnacle of all club competitions, inspired by the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino." Surely in a corporate governance of a big organisation like that, there should be some checks and balances, Ian, on that level of personal...
But this is the point. You mentioned there about the meeting where heads of several national bodies got up and walked away because he was late. I remember reading that story and thinking, well, finally somebody stood up to him. But if only some of the national associations, confederations, would stand up to him on the things that matter. If they'd have stood up to him over the Qatar World Cup, they might have made a difference. If somebody stood up to him over this summer nonsense that's taking place now, and if somebody stood up to him when he was trying and succeeding on pushing through his desire to have a Saudi Arabia World Cup, people would stand up to him over these things. If people would say no, and I know it's pie in the sky, okay, but I believe it anyway. If a national team, a national federation just said no, we don't agree with the way that World Cup was awarded to that nation. We don't agree with the process. We're not coming, okay? Can you imagine that? Okay, see, Mark, you're pulling faces at me.
No, because
okay,
but you're missing the biggest fact. You're missing the biggest point. What? Infantino's clever. He did it in UEFA. What he did in UEFA, he brought in the financial fair play. Mm-hmm. He increased the Euro in 2016 teams, so he's given more teams opportunity. So straight away, if, for example, you've said about federations going against Infantino, they'll never, because what he's done is he's increased the World Cup to give them a better chance of qualifying. If they qualify, 48 federations are going to qualify. 48 federations are going to be very, very happy. They're going to receive a lot of money, which will help with their infrastructure. Okay? So that's where it all lies. The votes are generated by the federations. The federations are happy. He's created the animal that is protecting himself in FIFA going forward.
So everybody's complicit, and therefore it takes somebody of stature, someone whose opinion resonates. So I would say one of the absolute superpower nations in terms of football standing, whether that be Germany, whether that be Brazil, whether that be England, just say, no, we're not coming. We're not coming to your tournament because we don't agree with the fact it's been played in December, and we don't agree with the fact it's been played in Saudi Arabia, etc. Until somebody does that, and it will never happen, then what do all bullies do? They carry on bullying until someone stands up to them.
But is it bullying, Ian? I'm not trying to stick up for Infantino. I've met him several. Yeah, I've met him several times in when he was working in UEFA, and I found him a person who was wanting to lead an organisation forward. He brought UEFA forward. He brought a lot of good things in. Financial fair play was one, because there was a lot of rogue owners trying to get into football. He was trying to protect the good of football. So the stuff that he's done He was forward thinking. He wanted to increase and give more teams chances. Because I remember one argument. I was in his company once, and one of his arguments about increasing the tournaments was he felt qualification for a lot of teams, if they'd lost the first 2 or 3 games, they were finished, and it felt they didn't have a chance. So what he was trying to do was give a lot of nations chances to qualify. I get that argument. I do. I think your argument about having a pre-qualifying to before they get into the tournament, which still gives them the financial gain, is a point going forward. But he's give nations more opportunities, which has given them chances to certainly develop their football. Forget about Qatar, because that was a separate issue. That wasn't growing the game. That was certainly not. The stadiums haven't been developed, or certainly not going forward. But there is some benefits. For example, Germany over the years have benefited from World Cups because of the stadiums. So I get what he's trying to do. And I get what he's trying to do if we're trying to modernise football. I get what he's trying to do with influencers and YouTubers, because it seems to be the way forward. I'm not saying it could end up
the Ballers League, can't you? The popularity.
So he's surrounding himself by this, ISO speed, and he's laughing and joking on with him in the opening game. He's trying to engage with the younger market. Why not? Mm-hmm. Why are we always against? Are we always wanting football to run this? Football has got to be for everybody, and I feel.
But
at the moment, football. But
the footballers are what the younger market come for.
Yes, but
they don't come.
Yeah, but we're losing a lot of younger people now because they don't want to watch football. And he's trying. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. At least he's trying. He's trying to bring a modern FIFA. FIFA was old school many years ago with Blatter. He's trying to bring it forward, and I'm all for trying to make it better. I'm all for making the tournaments bigger, giving more nations more chances. I do believe that the smaller teams or nations should play in a pre-qualify. I'm all for that. So the best teams are playing in the tournament, but give everybody a chance, because surely it's about enjoyment, about the development of their football within their countries, and we'll see things going forward.
Is there an argument here that leadership isn't about popularity? As Sir Alex Ferguson always said, you only need 4 to carry your coffin, and he has to make unpopular decisions in an era that is challenging, as Mark says, for football.
But Infantino's answer to everything always seems to be the same, which is just make it bigger.
Yeah.
Just make it more, make it richer, and that will solve everything. And of course it doesn't, because a 48-team World Cup, I can't see how that improves quality. And you're talking, Mark, about increasing, getting younger eyes on football. Okay, so what do we know about younger people now? Okay, their attention span is nothing like our attention span was 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So how does a 5-week World Cup tournament that only really gets going in the last fortnight benefit anybody apart from the people whose prime motivation is to make money out of it?
But that's another discussion about how the tournament is broke up in future. I think going forward, I do like the idea he's increased. I do like the idea that it's given smaller nations.
No, you know why?
Look, Gordon's got a smile on his face. Now Scotland have a chance to qualify for the World Cup. Finally.
But do you know what it does? And to me, it increase what the small nations should be, and I'm talking about the real minnows, should be encouraged to do is to develop the right structures, develop the right foundations, the right coaching programs, the right academies to improve the quality of their sports, to enable them to get into the tournaments. What we're doing now is making it much easier for them to get into tournaments by making the tournaments bigger. So they think, well, you know what? Say it's mean to pick on Andorra, but let's say Andorra because they played England recently. Andorra know now that every 2 years they'll get a nice European qualifying group to play, and then 2 years later they'll get a nice World Cup qualifying group to play, out of which they'll make a certain amount of money. Where's the motivation for them to get better? Because they know they're in it every time anyway.
But just on that point, forget about the game with Bayern Munich. If you look at international football over the years, I have to say, mind, it's got these smaller nations aren't smaller nations anymore. They're competing. Well, many years ago, you would have 8-0s, 10-0s. You don't see that much now in international football. Mm-hmm. Very rare you see that freak result. You'll see 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, 3-1, but you never see these hammerings anymore. So the smaller clubs are getting better.
Just bringing it back to Infantino and the good listeners of the Whistleblowers podcast. Pete Nicholson, what an absolute bell piece. I mean, that guy could write for the Daily Mail, couldn't he? Craig Ellis. Even Sepp Blatter is rolling his eyes. Thank you very much for them. And remember, you can get in touch with us, whistleblowers@dailymail.com. Our social accounts as well. On X, Blowers Pod. On TikTok, Whistleblowers Podcast. Instagram, Whistleblowers Pod. So please keep in touch. Right, on the subject of Infantino, ego and narcissism, I don't know if you've heard much about the stickers.
Why did he look at me when you said that?
I don't know, just naturally.
Was that just natural, was it?
I don't know if you're aware of this, but Gianni Infantino, this is blowing my mind. He has made himself one of the Panini stickers. Right. I mean, is there anything, Mark, would you have done that? The referees page. Have you ever been a Panini sticker?
I haven't been, but I had them remember them match cards?
Yeah, match cards.
And every stadium I went, fans were waiting for us to sign them. And I thought I was loving life. I was actually, I would actually made it.
Group of people waiting to sign.
Yeah.
Now Gladiators is happening, man. I can imagine.
Exactly. But if you're going to open that packet,
I've got a packet here. Yeah.
Right, I'm going to guarantee, because you're saying he's egotistic, he's going to be in that packet, isn't he? He's got to be in every packet to promote it.
Kids up and down the country in the playground looking for the Infantino sticker.
Swap you.
So Mark, do the honours. You can open it and see if.
I think
swap you a cane for an Infantino.
I think it's going to be
here in a school playground.
Yeah.
But I think. Remember the Panini, there was the badges with the gold. Yeah, the foil, you would be like looking in.
Shiny.
The shiny ones, and you'd be like, going, oh yes, I've got a badge.
I've got a foil.
I've got a foil. Do you think he'll be in the foil one?
Well, imagine he's got to be a foil one.
Here we go.
Yeah, hold on.
Oh, look, he's got Tosh McKinley.
Hold on. I've even left one in, you see. Stick. Yeah, I've got. Oh, hold on. Morocco. Italian. Oh, is that
Howard Webb?
No, that's there's no referees in it. That's put it that way. There's not one. They're all players.
So the search for Infantino.
So Infantino will.
Yeah.
So will that be for the next podcast? We'll be opening another.
We'll open another packet, and if we do find it, his sticker is titled. Would you like to have a guess? I mean, this is actually quite a good game. What would you entitle Infantino's sticker?
God.
What would you reckon?
The boss. But will it be number 1?
Yeah, they've got a number on the back, haven't they?
Yeah.
Chronological. What's that? So that's an Italian one at 265, is it?
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you
there's 297, 500s.
His sticker is titled The Emblem.
I like that. I love that.
The emblem.
So here's my next question, Ian. If you had a sticker for football writers, what would yours be?
Me, the OAP.
The legendary.
Mark?
Yeah. I can't. Can I? Twat.
Right, okay.
Anybody else? Anyone out there, by the way, who gets Infantino in your sticker?
Actually, can we have that for next week? Can we have that for next week? I think the viewers should give us for next week what our sticker should be.
So if Infantino's the emblem, what's Mark Clattenburg and Ian Lade?
And
forget about Gordon Smart. Let's not forget Gordon.
Don't. It's been tight this year. Whistleblowers@dailymail.com. As I say, X, it's Blowers Pod. TikTok, Whistleblowers Podcast. Instagram, Whistleblowers Pod. Listen, Mark, we've got to mention, because it came up the podcast last week, David Coote. There's an interesting situation where he's now being punished. He's being charged by the FA, which, I mean, I don't know what your view is on it, but is it a double punishment? Is that fair, do you think?
What a load of rubbish. Absolute rubbish. That we've now, he was sacked in December last year, so he's been removed from his position. He didn't appeal, so therefore his position as a professional referee is finished.
Yeah.
He was suspended for 16 months by UEFA because of the drugs during an international tournament. So that's why UEFA were involved in that situation. We've now waited 7 months for a charge. I understand why the charge was delayed, because they were looking at a separate issue of match fixing where he'd alleged to have said, I think was it a Leeds game or something, where he'd said that he was going to caution a player or something like that. So they were looking at a separate allegation. So I think they were trying to bring all the charges together. What use are them charges? And is that the FA being such an old school where he's already sacked? What achievement are they going to get out? Are they going to give him another ban when he's finished, or they're going to give him a monetary fine, which would be criminal anyways and stupid when he's already lost his job and he's financially insecurity within his own life. He's also got mental health issues. All of this added on when he's already tried to park the bus of what's happened in his career. It's now been brought up again 6 months later. I just feel, I remember how the FA work. I was working on a consultancy basis for Nottingham Forest, and I did a column for the Daily Mail, which I did every Monday, and I don't criticise anything. I just say how it is. You know, that's what my job is a writer, that I have to express what I felt on the referees and the VR's performance, like any other fan would. And the FA wanted to charge me because they believed that my article for the Daily Mail and working for the club brought the football into disrepute. And I said, well, hold on, if you say that because of my connection with the Mail and Nottingham Forest, that my comments can be brought to a charge, what about Gary Neville, who owns and has some shares in Salford, but also says things for Sky, but you don't do anything there? Mysteriously, the FA decided not to charge me 2 weeks later. So there's rules for one and rules for another. However, I just think this Dave Coote situation, it's already been finished. He's tried to move on with his life. Why bring it back up? Why to make a charge now, unless it's going to be a fine of monetary value, which I can't see. Therefore, what they're going to do, give him a 6-month ban on top of what? He's already lost his job.
I think you just have to ask who it serves. Who does this serve? Does it serve football more widely? No. I think we should let the poor guy get on with his...
Working as a delivery driver now, we should remind everybody.
Let the poor guy get on with his life.
Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be an easy life for him. You know, under the scrutiny that he's got, you know, people using a Ring doorbell to take a video of him delivering parcels and selling it to a newspaper. Come on. Mm-hmm. You know, let this guy move on with his life. He's had difficult moments. He's trusted friends who have backfired on him. Okay. Showing videos. Let's allow him to move on.
Right then, time for a guest. We are joined today by a man who played 77 times for England, participated in 3 World Cups, and is the subject of one of football's most iconic photographs. Mr. Terry Butcher, welcome to Whistleblowers.
Thank you very much.
Terry, for anybody who's just listening to this, you have a magnificent picture in the background that looks like it might have been gifted to you by David Murray at Rangers because it's worth about £4 million. Which gallery did he steal that from?
No, that's a McDonald. When I was up in Scotland, my friend used to go around to the art sort of galleries, and he sort of said, you know, this is a nice one, and it's got Highland cows, it's got the sunshine and the showers which you normally have in Scotland. So it was very reminiscent of near where we lived. So yeah, it's a beauty. It really is.
That was a good stint of your life, wasn't it, Terry? Up north, you were a Highlander effectively for a while.
Well, yeah, I've got a kilt as well. I've got tartan trousers. Got many sort of pieces of memorabilia, but it was great for us. We really loved it. My wife would go back in a heartbeat. She absolutely adored the place. And the thing about it is that when you're in Scotland as an Englishman, you get a lot of stick, obviously, but you've got to give some stick back. And I gave plenty back as well. So it was give and take, but they respect that a lot. But just underneath the surface, there's that anti-English feeling, but you know, you just got to knock it back down and keep it there.
Yeah, can I have that kilt and those trews back, please, Terry?
No. Yeah, they probably wouldn't fit you anyway. Yeah, they do. Yeah, I'm just about now about 4 pounds above my playing weight when I was 2021, something like that. So yeah, it's been. But mind you, when I was a manager in Scotland, and I used to have your team meetings and team discussions with all your staff. We used to have cake, biscuits, cheese, everything else like that. I was one fat bugger, I really was.
Yeah. Well, actually, Terry, you've teed it up perfectly, right? Because we need to deal with the elephant in the room. Because I will promise you, I won't mention Diego Maradona's brilliant header against England in '86. If you can just say sorry to the Hibs fans right now for that little run of luck.
Oh yeah, that was doomed for that one right from the start. But yeah, I mean, I love the club. I thought it was great potential, but yeah, sometimes when you move, I mean, you look at Amorim and Manchester United. You know, the same things that you were doing at your previous club just weren't working, and we had a difficult time, put it that way.
We mentioned at the top there about that iconic picture, and there are some brilliant photographs in football over the years, but yours is an absolute cracker. And Ian actually has a little story, don't you, about that particular picture?
Yeah, so Terry, I've been around this business for quite a while now. I've been a football writer for 30 years. But back in the day when I counted myself just as a run-of-the-mill football fan in my teens and early 20s, I had the photograph of you, bloodied but unbowed, from that game playing for England in Sweden. I had that photograph. It was just torn from a magazine. Don't know which magazine, why I chose to tear it out. But when I was a student and I was living in different houses, and then I went to become a journalist in Stoke-on-Trent and Nottingham, and then down to London, that photo went everywhere with me in my late teens, early 20s. It was on my wall. I don't know why. As a football fan, there was just something about it that absolutely captured my imagination.
Well, that's really spooky, to be honest, and really sad, because you've done that. Really sad. You should get out more, to be honest. No. A lot of people say to me they've got that picture as well, but they've got a family and they put it above the fire to stop the kids from going on the fire. And then a number of people that ring me up and say, "Look, this is me," and show a picture of me, show a picture of them with the bloodied headband and the red sort of top. And they say they go to fancy dress parties and at Halloween in October. So I get flooded with those pictures. But yeah, I mean, it is iconic, and it is that it's nice to be remembered for something like that. But it's just, I just look at it as, well, it's just any Englishman worth his salt would have done that and would have carried on and played. Because I was the captain and it was a World Cup qualifier, so you want to stay on the pitch. But yeah, it was interesting. And the saddest thing is, I didn't have image rights in those days. That was a real bugger, because I would be worth an absolute fortune now if I had image rights. But no, I'm not. Yeah, it's just one of those things. But I've seen lots of incidents where there's been blood and all this sort of thing. John Wilde, FA Cup semi-final with Ipswich in '78. Brian Talbot in that same game, and they carried on. And that's what you are expected to do, and that's what I would expect to do of any Englishman. So yeah, but thanks very much. It's probably faded away and broken in bits, that photograph now. But yeah, I never knew that. And I think when you look at football, when you speak to a lot of players, ex-players, they've all got stories, and the fans have all got stories about a certain incident that involved you. It's very interesting to hear that. Yeah.
Terry, one other thing, 1987, one of my fondest childhood memories, which probably says a lot about where I grew up, was that Old Firm derby. When I think Frank McAvenny was involved, you were involved, Graham Roberts, there was all sorts of shenanigans going on, red cards, 2-goal comeback. I mean, when you look back on that, football doesn't seem to have that level of drama, does it?
No, it certainly doesn't. I've not seen anything like that since. And it was a long, drawn-out process. We were in court the next year. And we got me and Chris Woods were found guilty of breach of the peace, and the other two got off. So yeah, that did. So I mean, Souness was worried at the time, Graham, that we were going to leave the club, that we wanted to get out of Scotland because we felt we were being victimised and pressured and all this sort of thing. So we never felt that. We wanted to show people that we could still play, and we wanted to kick the Celtic players even harder. But no, it was really a case of just get on with it. It's unfortunately one of those things. And the thing about it is, it still hasn't been expunged from my record. I still have a criminal record of a breach of the peace, which I find absolutely ridiculous.
So, what exactly happened? You got a £250 fine after the game for a breach of the peace, I think, wasn't it? But during the game, Chris Woods got in bother for sort of conducting the Rangers fans, but it did turn into a scrap on the pitch.
No, Chris Woods caught the ball, and McAvenny, I think it was from a corner or a free kick, caught the ball, and McAvenny went up to him to stop him from throwing the ball out quickly, and he sort of rattled his chops, rattled his face. And Chris Woods didn't like that very much. And Chris Woods was the son of a farmer, and he had big muscles, and he was going to hit him, but he couldn't hit him. But he grabbed him by the throat, and obviously Frank couldn't move. So then he pushes him to the side, and then I come in and give him a gentle push, and he went about 30 yards. And then Graham Roberts came in and I think delivered the punch. And then McAvenny got up and he was promptly sent off. Chris Woods was sent off, and I got a yellow card. So it was bizarre, really was, because it was right in front of the Celtic end as well at Ibrox, and they were obviously worried about riots and all this sort of thing, people coming on the pitch. But it was, and the thing, I also broke my leg in '87 as well, just shortly after that incident, sort of thing. So I was in bed, lying in bed with a stookie on, a big plaster on up to the top of my thigh, and the policeman had to come in and they had to coordinate the charges. We were then officially charged for a breach of the peace, and I was lying in my bed with this plaster on, and the policeman was a big Rangers fan, and he was so apologetic.
Of course he was.
He says, I'm really sorry, big man. I'm really sorry. I've got to charge you. I don't like doing this, but I've got to charge you for a breach of the peace. And then he went into his spiel, and that was it. So,
Scottish listeners there, Terry, saying, what, a Scottish policeman supported Rangers? You're kidding.
Well, I think he was one of a minority, I think, at the time. But,
Terry, did you break your leg kicking the door off the hinges at Pataudry? Is that how it happened?
No, I wouldn't, yeah. No, I broke my leg in, we played Aberdeen at home, and our big Alec McLeish came in to block the shot. And typical centre-half shot went over the bar, and my leg just sort of followed through. And he caught me with his outstretched foot, the base of his foot, and bang. But I still tried to get up when I was on the floor because it hurt, obviously, and I still tried to get up and stood on it. It made it even worse. I could feel the bones move, and I thought, well, I better go off. So I was carried off. I wasn't carried off in a stretcher. I was carried off by the physio. Oh. So, yeah. But no, I did kick the door at Pataudry. I'm very, very proud of that. It was the referee's door, but the referee wasn't there at the time, so I probably got away with it. But I was charged. I was charged after the game when we played. I was charged after that game as well, so I'm pretty much used to that.
So I want to know, what did the referee do for you to kick his door in?
Well, I was just angry. That was the first thing I saw when I came in the tunnel, was the referee's room at Pataudry, and I thought, that'll do. I'll just take my temper out on that, because that was the game that Ian Durant had, was it Neil Simpson went in for the tackle, and Ian Durant's knee, and his cruciate and everything else went on that. So I was just angry for the wee man, for Ian. We lost the game. We lost the game as well, so that didn't help.
Terry, you were well known as a leader throughout your time at particularly Ipswich and with England, of course, and a captain and someone who took that role very, very seriously. Can I ask you a very, very blunt question? If you were if you were captain of England right now, what would you do with Jude Bellingham?
He's a bit like Gaza in many respects, with his ability his football ability is unbelievable, and what he can do and how he does it, and is incredible. Same with Gaza. Gaza was the same. Gaza. Jude's not as mad as Gaza, but he has, as you say, he has that other side. And the players sometimes do. It'd be like Bobby Robson did with Gaza, is to put your arm around him, speak to him nicely, just praise him, but obviously there's a bit of a warning there as to what can happen. Get be in the spotlight for one reason, and that's your ability. But I think it was from Jude's point of view, it's frustration as well. So in our day, the players used to have a go at each other. If something did something wrong, they'd have a go anyway. So and it's a little bit unknown now for players to have a go at each other on the pitch, or have a go at each other anyway, because it's very, very friendly, but perhaps too friendly. But I would just put my arm around him and just say, look, come on, you're a great player. Let's go and show that we need you. Leave all the other stuff to other people, because you get the headlines for the right reason. That's your football ability. So yeah, a bit of TLC, I think that would be certainly needed.
Can we roll back a wee bit, Terry, just for a second? Because I wanted to ask Mark how you react when a player like Terry Butcher kicks the door off the hinges, or when you're refereeing a game where 3 players are getting red cards and the police are getting involved for public affray. How do you handle something like that?
The size of Terry Butcher, if he kicked my door and I would just open it and let him in.
The referee wasn't in the door at the same time.
But there's one thing Terry, there's one game I always wanted a referee and we couldn't. Was the Old Firm game, and I think when you watch it over the years, it wasn't a game of football, was it? It wasn't. I didn't see much football being played. It was, it must have been difficult for the referees in Scotland to be able to handle an Old Firm game, especially the way it was played out.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had the top referees refereed that game, all the time, sort of thing, but. you couldn't put a fledgling in, could you? You couldn't put a younger one in that hasn't really done many games, because that would be too much. But it's intense. It's noise. It's just noisy all the time. You know, you can't talk to people 5 yards away from you, because the wall of noise is just there for 90 minutes plus. So, you know, and they're the enemy. You know, they're the main enemy of your job, whether you play for Celtic or whether you play for Rangers. You know, you got to beat them. You know, not necessarily, you know, you could win the league, but you still got to beat, you know, your rivals. So I think it's enjoyable if you win, and it's actually the end of the world if you lose. And in between, if you draw, you don't know what to do. So it's incredible. You look forward to it. But there's a lot that goes on in the Old Firm games that you know used to be, you know, sort of off camera, off many cameras. And things like that used to happen, which was norm for that sort of way of playing. Nowadays, you can't do anything, so it's a little bit more sterile. And now they're obviously going to let the fans back in as well. I think both sets of supporters, which I think has been badly missed. Yeah, so, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's you want to get it back to that sort of era, but you don't want the collisions and the fouls and the mayhem that sort of, you know, follows it. You want football to be played, but there's so much pressure on Celtic and Rangers fans, players. Because you don't want to be the one that makes the mistake that allows the enemy to score, but you want to be the one that's going to score against the enemy. So, and I've done plenty of both. I had plenty of own goals against Celtic and a few goals and up the other end as well. So it's after the game, you're just absolutely shattered. You just the sort of battering your mind takes, especially, and your body takes as well. It's hard, and that's why Rangers in particular, we used to lose. If we beat Celtic, you know, the Old Firm game, we generally lost the next game, because you're spent psychologically, mentally, physically. You've given everything to the Old Firm game, so it can be a dangerous one afterwards. So, you know, we lost a few, but generally won more than we lost.
Terry, I think the psychological impact of playing in the Old Firm games is something that you probably carry with you for a long time. And you know, on a more serious point, I know you've got a big connection with the armed forces in this country through your son, and you're working on the bigger breakfast at the moment. Tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing there.
Well, the bigger breakfast, we're trying to get 1,000 people for a breakfast. Obviously, veterans and their families. We're looking at the families, because the families are the ones that suffer from military personnel coming back from tours, like a lot from Iraq and Afghanistan. That's you know, I've got PTSD. They've got, you know, severe mental trauma. They had severe mental trauma, and they're very, very difficult to live with. And my son had that. He went to Iraq and Afghan, came back, and he was diagnosed with severe and complex PTSD. And at that time, around about 2014, there wasn't any real services. There was no medical help in terms of that PTSD. And he turned to alcohol, and eventually was going to turn to drugs. So, and he passed away because of the medications and everything else that had happened to him that he was on. So when you lose someone, like, you know, when he came back, it was very difficult to live with him. So the families suffer, and we want to get the people to come along and look at the families and help the families, because there's so much more help now than there was before. We've got the Ministry of Veterans and People, Alistair Carnes, I think he's an Aberdeen fan. I think he's from Aberdeen, former Royal Marine as well. So he's coming along as well to make an announcement. So, you know, we've got the big wigs there. I mean, I've been down to the Ministry of Defence as well, where we've got a coffee shop down there, Combat to Coffee. And the idea behind Combat to Coffee first is that you get a brew, as they do in the military, and then have a talk, and then open up. Because the men, you know what we're like, we just don't open up. We don't want to open up. We see it as a sign of weakness about your illness and about what you can and cannot do. So we've got this, you know, it's a big thing. I'm lucky I'm not really organising it very much. I suggested it and then sort of walked away, because they're now, you know, there's obviously military personnel involved in terms of field kitchens and how many eggs have we got? 2,000 eggs, and you know, for 1,000 people, you know, you've got these catering cans of beans. You've got to determine it down to the last sort of bean, how much one, like portion control and everything else.
You need Peter Beardsley again.
Yeah, oh, yeah, that's not a bad thing, I would say, but people can understand me. But no, it's for the families, and we want to say, look, you're welcome here. If you know of anybody let us know, because there's outreach now, and there's plenty of mental health charities that can make a big difference. PTSD resolution and all these kind of things. They weren't there when my son was there, and for him, that's why I'm with Combat to Coffee. I'm patron of it, and I want, and we help people. We get them help. We get them therapy. We get the families to help as well. And there's lots of charities for the families. So it's a brilliant world, the charity world. And now all the charities are speaking to each other, which they never used to do before, because they all wanted that money, and they all felt very, personal to themselves. So it's a bigger community, but it's a really good cause, and it's obviously close to my heart. That's why we're trying to do it. So the only thing is, I don't want to do the washing up.
I can imagine. So Terry, 1,000 members of the Armed Forces community, you've got serving personnel, veterans, families. When's it happening, the bigger breakfast Combat to Coffee lunch? When's that going on?
Well, it happens next Tuesday, the 24th of June. If you're interested in coming along or want to do that, or say anything and volunteer, it's you contact hello@combat2coffee. That's the number, combat2coffee.co.uk. hello@combat2coffee.co.uk. So it's next week, the 24th of June, and it starts from 9 o'clock on to 11. So yeah, we should have a good time, and it'd be lovely to see all the families there.
Oh, Terry, it's an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time today. We'll let you get off to check in with your parole officer from 1987. I know you've got to do that every week.
Can I just ask Mark, yeah. When in the referees and Ardo, well before you, the things that really got me going was they used to obviously I committed a foul sort of thing, so they'd come and then they wanted to caution me, so they would call me over, and they always used to ask my name. I mean, I'm just thinking, well, do you know who the hell I am? Why do you ask my name? So in today's football, do the referees ask for the name or just flash the card?
No, that never happens now. You flash a card and put a number down. It's a numbers game. But it's interesting because I remember asking a player when I first started, what's your name? And he said, Mickey Mouse. So I stopped asking them the names. I thought, I'm not asking anymore. And we just used to just look at the number, put the number in, and if you got the same number again, yeah. Because you knew the players. We used to call, and I don't know what it was like in your day, Terry, but when I was refereeing in the Premier League, I called them by the names because I felt we're all in it together. They called me Mark. Therefore, I called them by their first name.
They never called you Mark once.
Yeah.
Come on.
I can't repeat what they used to say to us.
Terry, were you ever tempted to try and give a false name?
Well, 6'4", you must be joking. I mean, everybody knows who I am.
Mr. Butcher, Mr. Butcher.
Yeah, I would have. Yeah, no. But the other thing as well was when you commit the foul and the referee calls you over, he says, "Come on, on this," to caution you. I would never go to the referee. I would never go. I'd make it a point of principle of us standing there. So then the referee eventually came to me, and I thought, it's small things. It's small things.
No, but that's reverse psychology. Because if a player did that, I'm thinking next time you're not getting that second chance.
Yes. Yeah, I did.
Terry Butcher, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it today, and best of luck with a bigger breakfast and Combat to Coffee. Thank you.
Cheers, Terry.
Thank you very much.
Terry.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a
Good
lot.
health. Good health.
That's it for the latest episode of Whistleblowers. We'll be back on Tuesday for the next instalment. Until then, remember to follow us on socials. It leaves us with one thing to do, to draw a line under this episode. Mark, would you blow the full-time whistle?
I was actually going to bring me whistling, wasn't I?
You are,
next
yeah.
one I'm going to. Next one.
If you want to watch more episodes of Whistleblowers, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll keep you up to date all the way through the summer with everything that's happening in the world of football.